Before I begin, how many of you know the story of Savitri? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Very good. So, for those of you who are not aware of it, it is an ancient legend in one of the great books, the Mahabharata. And it is simply the story of a young woman who finds her answering soul in this young man. And she meets her family after she has found him. And there, visiting with the king and queen, is Narad, who is I would say, the divine singer and the connection between the heavens and the earth. And he tells this young girl, in 12 months, your beloved will die. And so she goes deep within herself and finds that she is an emanation of the Divine Mother. And she challenges death and eventually gets her husband back, defeating death and bringing a new life to the earth. Now, Sri Aurobindo has taken that legend and he has said it is a legend and a symbol. So it's a symbol, very briefly, of the divine love conquering death and the establishment of a divine life on this earth. We are now in Canto 2 of Book 1, where Savitri has to face all the challenges of the universe, including all the darknesses. So I begin with page 19, the end. To stay the wheels of doom, this greatness rose. To stay here means to hold back, to restrain these wheels of doom. This greatness is obviously Savitri. At the unseen's knock upon her hidden gates, her strength made greater by the lightning's touch, awoke from slumber in her heart's recess. So she is awakening to the journey she must take. And that journey, he tells us in the next line, it bore the stroke of that which kills and saves. He capitalizes the word T in that. Across the awful march no eye can see, barring its dreadful route no will can change. She faced the engines of the universe. A heart stood in the way of the driving wheels. Its giant workings paused in front of a mind. Its stark conventions met the flame of a soul. This is Savitri. But now Sri Aurobindo takes us into a different area, speaking directly to humanity. A magic leverage suddenly is caught that moves the veiled ineffable's timeless will. Now, the reason I go through Savitri so slowly is to share with you Sri Aurobindo's definitions of aspects of his yoga. Now, the ineffable, according to the dictionary, is something that's incapable of being expressed. But what Sri Aurobindo says, and he says a lot, I'll share from the Synthesis of Yoga, a transcendent bliss, unimaginable and inexpressible by the mind and speech, is the nature of the ineffable. And the absolute is for us the ineffable. He says its presence is described as a secret ether of the bliss of being, of which the scripture says that if this were not, none could for a moment breathe or live. Very important statement. And now these two extraordinary lines. A prayer, a master act, a king idea can link man's strength to a transcendent force. Then miracle is made the common rule. One mighty deed can change the course of things. A lonely thought becomes omnipotent. I'll read that again. A prayer, a master act, a king idea can link man's strength to a transcendent force. And what does Sri Aurobindo say about this force that he capitalizes here? In the Renaissance in India, one of his books, all force is power, or means of a secret spirit. The force that sustains the world is a conscious will, and nature is its machinery of executive power. And in his Essays in Philosophy and Yoga, he tells us the force is Prakriti, or Shakti, the female principle in nature, which is the root of all action. We should remember that clearly. The female principle in nature, which is the root of all action. Then miracle is made the common rule. One mighty deed can change the course of things. A lonely thought becomes omnipotent. All now seems nature's massed machinery, an endless servitude to material rule, which is what we face in life, this endless servitude to material rule. We have to eat, we have to sleep, we have to buy things, we have to meet people. It's an endless servitude to material rule and long determination's rigid chain. Her firm and changeless habits aping law. Now, I want to share with you a little of what Sri Aurobindo tells us about law, because we know something of law. There are laws: do not do this, you cannot do this, you will be challenged if you do something. But Sri Aurobindo tells us in The Life Divine, one of his great works, all cosmic and real law is not a thing opposed from outside, but from within. All development is self-development. All seed and result are seed of a truth of things, and result of that seed determined out of its potentialities. For the same reason, no law is absolute, because only the infinite is absolute, and everything contains within itself endless potentialities quite beyond its determined form and course, which are only determined through a self-limitation by idea proceeding from an infinite liberty within. So powerful. So it means, basically, that law is changeable. As we rise from the ignorance into the higher realms of consciousness, the laws change. Morality is no longer applicable because we see with different eyes. And so not only that, and he says no law is absolute because only the infinite is absolute. But we have within us a self-determination that we can, even now, change the laws of existence. And this is basically what Mother and Sri Aurobindo came to do, to bring a new force into the earth, which they call the supramental. And the supramental is so far above us right now that we have to learn to live and grow into that experience. And in the supramental, there is no evil. That is only our perception in this world of ignorance. An endless servitude to material rule, and long determination's rigid change. Her firm and changeless habits, aping law, like an ape, when we ape someone or something. Her empire of unconscious deft device, annul the claim of man's free human will. Oh, he too is a machine amid machines. A piston brain pumps out the shapes of thought. A beating heart cuts out emotions' modes. An insentient energy fabricates a soul. Or the figure of the world reveals the signs of a tide chance, repeating her old steps in circles around matter's binding posts. So what are these binding posts? What is this tired chance repeating her old steps? Well, basically, we all have them. We have the binding posts of family, of education, of environment. We have the binding posts of our own thoughts, our own actions. And all of these are binding posts in circles around matter. A random series of inept events to which reason lends elusive sense is here. Now, we should talk a little about Sri Aurobindo's definition of reason. In the Synthesis of Yoga, he says the reason itself is only a special kind of application made by a surface regulating intelligence of suggestions which actually come from a concealed but sometimes partially overt and active power of the intuitive spirit. And in the Life Divine, he says, reason is only a messenger, a representative or a shadow of a greater consciousness beyond itself, which does not need to reason because it is all and knows all that is. And in the human cycle, he says, reason is in its nature an imperfect light with a large but still restricted mission. And lastly, again in the Life Divine, because we have to understand that reason is flawed, it's limited. So he says, reason, on the contrary, proceeds by analysis and division, and assembles its facts to form a whole. But in the assemblage so formed, there are opposites, anomalies, logical incompatibilities, and the natural tendency of reason is to affirm some and to negate others, which conflict with its chosen conclusions, so that it may form a flawlessly logical system. Or the empiric life's instinctive search. Oh, and we know about this empiric life that we've held on to for so many centuries. Whatever we can smell, taste, feel, see, all of these senses are part of the empiric life. What about the ether? We cannot see the ether. We cannot even feel the ether. And yet Sri Aurobindo says it's above all of these senses. Very, very interesting. Or a vast, ignorant mind's colossal work. Now, but wisdom comes, and vision grows within. Then nature's instrument crowns himself her king, because if that wisdom is pure and truthful, man can control nature. Unfortunately, in our time, he's done the opposite. He's often ruined nature. That will come back. When the supramental comes, it will turn even plastic waste and garbage into beauty. And this you may question, but it is definite that this will happen. I was in Cozumel years ago, and I went to this beautiful island that was pristine and the most beautiful place I've ever seen, where the river flows into the sea. Just this month, I saw a photo of a gigantic island of waste. It would break your heart to see this beautiful place destroyed by man. Now what is going to happen? Man is going to feel something. He feels his witnessing self and conscious power. What is this witnessing self? Sri Aurobindo speaks about the witness self in man that has the ability to separate itself from the body, life, and mind and see what is actually happening. The witness self. His soul steps back and sees the light supreme. Now, I'm going to share a passage that I've often shared and cannot share too much. It's about light, and you will all be touched by it. Our sense, by its incapacity, has invented darkness. In truth, there is nothing but light. Only it is a power of light, either above or below our poor human vision's limited range. For do not imagine that light is created by the suns. The suns are only physical concentrations of light, but the splendor they concentrate for us is self-born and everywhere. God is everywhere, and where God is, there is light. So, in truth, there is no light. But when the light is at the highest realm, the light of the Son of Suns, we may say, and begins to descend down into the form of earth and humanity, it diminishes itself as it goes down. But it never becomes anything but light. Mother once wrote to my friend who lived in the ashram and passed away at the age of 100, the following lines. The light is everywhere. The force is everywhere. And the world is so small. A Godhead stands behind the brute machine. And he has many quotes about this Godhead, capital G. I'll just read a little bit so we can have some concept, some feeling of the Godhead. From Essays on the Gita. The Godhead is all that is universe, and all that is in the universe, and all that is more than the universe. The Gita lays stress first on his supracosmic existence, for otherwise the mind would miss its highest goal and remain turned towards the cosmic only, or else attached to some partial experience of the divine in the cosmos. It lays stress next on his universal existence, in which all moves and acts. For that is the justification of the cosmic effort, and that is the vast spiritual self-awareness in which the Godhead self-seen as the time spirit, does his universal works. Next, it insists with a certain austere emphasis on the acceptance of the Godhead as the divine inhabitant in the human body. So we see that the Godhead is first, everything in the universe and beyond the universe. And next, he moves in this universe. But we cannot forget about the acceptance of the Godhead as the divine inhabitant in the body. No one is exempt from the divine inhabitant in the body. He is there in each of us. And our work on this earth is to find him. This truth broke in a triumph of fire. Sri Aurobindo's English is so far above the English that we know, because in Savitri it is mantra. And that mantra carries with it the power of transformation. If you repeat these lines of Savitri again and again, without struggling to understand with the limited mind, they will go deeply into your being and you will experience a transformation, at least a beginning transformation. So this truth broke in a triumph of fire. A victory was won for God in man. The deity revealed its hidden face. And now we see for the first time the great world mother now in her arose. A living choice reversed fate's cold, dead turn, affirmed the spirit's tread on circumstance, pressed back the senseless, dire, revolving wheel, and stopped the mute march of necessity. Briefly, Sri Aurobindo tells us that necessity is the child of the Spirit's free self-determination. I need to do this. What is that need? What is that necessity he is speaking about? He says it's just the child of the Spirit's free self-determination. And then he goes on to say, what affects us as necessity is a will which works in sequence and not a blind force driven by its own mechanism. Wow. That's from his essays in philosophy and yoga. And again, in his essays, Divine and Human, he says, what we call necessity is a truth of things working itself out in a time sequence of the infinite. Now he's speaking of Savitri, a flaming warrior from the eternal peaks, empowered to force the door denied and closed, smote from death's visage its dumb absolute, and burst the bounds of consciousness and time. And now I'm going to share with you Sri Aurobindo on death. And there's a lot, but it's good that we can understand what death truly is. In 2 letters on yoga, he writes, 3 letters actually, for the spiritual seeker, death is only a passage from one form of life to another, and none is dead, but only departed. The next letter, death, has no separate existence by itself. It is only a result of the principle of decay in the body, and that principle is there already. From the moment we're born, we begin to die. It is part of the physical nature. At the same time, it is not inevitable. If one could have the necessary consciousness and force, decay and death is not inevitable. But to bring that consciousness and force into the whole of the material nature is the most difficult thing of all. At any rate, in such a way as to annul the decay principle. And that last letter, death is there because the being in the body is not yet developed enough to go on growing in the same body without the need of change. And the body itself is not sufficiently conscious. If the mind and vital and the body itself were more conscious and plastic, death would not be necessary. A couple more. Essays in Philosophy and Yoga. Death is the question nature puts continually to life, and her reminder to it that it has not yet found itself. If there were no siege of death, the creature would be bound forever in the form of an imperfect living. Pursued by death, he awakes to the idea of perfect life and seeks out its means and its possibility. We have to face the future's offer of death as well as its offer of life, and it need not alarm us, for it is by constant death to our old names and forms that we shall live most vitally in greater and newer forms and names. And lastly, he says, death has no reality except as a process of life. Any questions? And one more letter on yoga. Of course, that is the real fact. Death is only a shedding of the body, not a cessation of the personal existence. A man is not dead because he goes into another country and changes his clothes to suit that climate. Yes, we often grieve after the departed, because that's our human nature. But we must also realize that we should not hold the soul back from its place of rest, which Sri Aurobindo tells us in general is only about 2 years, and then we take birth again. Imagine how many births we must all have had already to be here at this very special moment in life. Never in life before was this moment possible, until Sri Aurobindo brought down the supramental into his body and had to give up his body to cement it firmly here. I prefer to read Sri Aurobindo's definitions of words that we may consider ordinary, for they are everything but. He gives us so much when he capitalizes a word, because that is the essence of the thing. I just want to talk a little bit about time and space, because they are conceptual movements and extensions of the Godhead in us, and that is from the essays on the Gita. Time and space are not limited, they are infinite. They are the terms of an extension of consciousness in which things take place, or are arranged in a certain relation, succession, order. There are again different orders of time and space. That too depends on the consciousness. The eternal is extended in time and space, but he is also beyond all time and space. Timelessness and time are two terms of the eternal existence. The spaceless eternal is not one indivisible infinity of space. There is in it no near or far, no here or there. The timeless eternal is not measurable by years or hours or eons. The experience of it has been described as the eternal moment. But for the mind, this state cannot be described except by negatives. One has to go beyond and to realize it. So we come to the end of Canto 2, and in our session next week, we will begin Canto 3. And this is the canto of the yoga of the soul's release. It's all about Ashwapati, who is, we can say, a synonym of Sri Aurobindo, because it's all Sri Aurobindo's experience. So we'll see what Ashwapati, the father of Savitri, is going through and is going to experience. I am going slowly so that we may all deeply receive the grace and the mantric force that flows through these lines of Savitri. I am also aware that there are a number of people whose first language is not English. So defining words, even those familiar to English-speaking people, is of importance. Then too, Sri Aurobindo is actually creating a new English, and we must be cognizant of that at all times. Any questions? Yes. You have to speak a little louder, please. Okay, please tell me.
I heard you speaking about death. and how souls reincarnate in different bodies.
Yes.
And I have read this in Vedas, in Hindu line of thought, in this. But my mind conflicts very strongly because in Abrahamic line of thoughts it says that every soul gets to live only once and then there is an afterlife.
Yes, this is unfortunately the Abrahamic understanding that there is one life and you have to lead it properly, or you have three choices: heaven, purgatory, or hell. In between heaven and hell, where you have to suffer a bit for all your sins. The Indian understanding is totally different, that we are essentially divine and must become truly divine through our many births and deaths. It's totally different. Pardon?
I agree, and it says that you transcend by each life and then you reach
Yes,
moksha.
you grow more in each life. But Sri Aurobindo has coined a phrase that was never here on earth before, called the psychic being. And the psychic being, in Savitri, he has a beautiful line, but I'll explain to you just simply. It is right here, and it hides behind the heart, not in front of the heart. And it is that we have to bring forth. And when one brings forth the psychic being, all the world changes. One loves everyone. There is no good or evil to one who loves everything and everyone. Of course, we see this chair as a chair, but we know that it's not a chair, that it's a formulation of atoms and etc. that appear to us as a chair. But above this consciousness, we know that all is divine. Even the chair is divine. Even the floor is divine. And I would suggest to you to discard, especially the Christian idea of only one shot, and then you're gone. Now, what is this heaven? Oh, Sri Aurobindo speaks a lot about this heaven. And above this, well, I would say above the angels are the gods. And above the gods is the supermind. And above the supermind, Satchitananda. And above Satchitananda, the vastness. And Mother tells us we will never stop evolving. There's a great beauty in that statement. Such hope.
Scientifically too, the universe is expanding continuously.
The universe is what?
Universe is expanding scientifically as well. In space.
The universe is the divine.
Yeah, I agree.
There's a line in the synthesis of yoga. All this world, I don't remember it exactly, all this world is He. And He is the more than all that is. And we, though we know it not, are being of His being. Conscious with a consciousness derived from Him. And we have to realize that this divine never goads us, but allows us to grow according to our nature. Any other questions?